Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by the amazing Jenn Wakely. Jenn, how you doing today?
Well, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm so excited to have you here. A little bit about Jenn. She is a horror artist that lives in Colorado with her husband. She has 2 kids and 3 grandkids, and she is the owner of DeathEatingPopcorn, which I am a huge fan of. Now, as proof of this, for Mother's Day, I purchased this for Ashley. Mrs. Voorhees losing her head. So this is something. Death Eating Popcorn, I think, is so awesome for not only all the horror fans out there, but if you have horror fans in your life that you want to get a card for, it's amazing. So, what drove you towards Death Eating Popcorn?
The name or the just
the company?
Just making art all my life, and then somebody told me that people would buy it, and I'm like, no, they won't. But then I tried it anyway. Etsy's only like 20 cents to list stuff on there, so like, why not? And then
Right.
people actually bought it. I'm like, wow, okay.
And it works because I think it's awesome. And like I said, guys, I do have the links down in the description so you can check it out for yourself. And like I said, for all the loved ones that love horror, or for yourself, let your loved ones know this is what you would like. And how long have you been doing Death Eating Popcorn for?
Since 2016, however long that is, 6 years.
Yeah. So, when you do, you only do cards, or do you do other things too there?
Oh no, I make stickers and prints and sculptures, like ornaments.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you guys can check that all out by clicking the link down here in the description, as well as I have Jenn's social media links. So make sure you're giving her a follow so you can stay up to date on everything that she's doing. Now, obviously, you're a big horror fan with Death Eating Popcorn, but the reason I invited you here today, Jenn, is to learn how that started. So I want to go back to the past and talk about the first horror movie that you watched. And Jenn, your first horror movie was?
I think A Nightmare on Elm Street.
What a great choice. I've always said if there was one movie in the horror genre that could be the closest to a perfect movie, this would be the one.
Yeah.
Do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Oh, God, maybe. Well, I was 5 when it came out, so maybe like 6 when it was out on video, because I know I watched it at home.
Yeah, and it's still to this day, it holds up. I love this film. There's so much about it that I'm just absolutely insane about. Do you remember who you were with the first time you had seen it?
Oh, my brother, probably my little brother. So he's even younger than I am when he watched it.
That's awesome. And what a way to start, because this is what I love about Freddy Krueger is the fact that you can't escape him. You can't run and hide. Everybody has to sleep eventually, and he's gonna get you.
Yeah.
You're up the creek at that point. Now, this is a movie that has a lot of very, very effective scenery. Even to this day, very effective scenery throughout the film. Which scene would you say, Jenn, affected you the most from Nightmare on Elm Street?
Oh, the Glenn being sucked into the bed and the blood fountain.
What
happened in there? Is there a human blender in there? What?
That's a lot of blood for just one guy.
It was, yeah. It was great.
And what's crazy about that scene is obviously they have to do a lot of these in one take. That's all they had was one take because of the budget they had. They were on a very small budget, and everything's done practically, and it all worked out so well. And that scene in particular is one that I think really sticks with us because at that time you didn't see something like that was completely practical, and seeing that happen and played out like that. And you think about it now, thinking that it was Johnny Depp, and it's even funnier. Like Johnny Depp is the one that got sucked in the waterbed and killed. And this movie is, personally, like I said, it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I think Freddy's probably my favorite villain of all time, right up there with my boy Jason. But what would you say your favorite scene from A Nightmare on Elm Street is?
Ooh, gosh, probably the Glenn scene, and then the right after where they're like, we don't need a body bag, we need a sponge.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, that's so great. Like, that paints a picture.
It really does. And what sucks, like the parents finding him is the one thing that's like, as an adult you watch, you're like you can't even imagine seeing something like that happen.
Yeah, as a kid it was like, oh, that's interesting, but then as a mom, like, what would you do if you just walk the way the mom screams
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very like, oh my god, yeah, totally.
And
What would
all
you
he had
even?
to do was
You'd lose
stay
your mind.
awake.
And see, I love sleeping, and I have a hard time staying awake. So I'd be doomed.
Oh,
I only stay up for like concerts. So now anything past 10, I'm like,
I mean, I'm telling you right now, if Freddie came for me, I'd be done.
yeah,
I got 3 kids. I sleep every chance I possibly can. Um,
exactly.
so obviously with this, A Nightmare on Elm Street is very effective, and they did have a 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Did you watch the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake? And if you did, what were your thoughts on
Uh, I did watch it, and I don't like it,
it?
but it had some good scenes. It had some good ideas, like those micro naps or whatever. They're like kind of asleep, and then they're kind of awake, and
Yeah.
that was kind of cool. But mostly no, that Jackie Earl Haley is not Robert Englund,
Right.
and yeah, I think they use
See,
like digital blood sometimes too, and digital blood does not look good.
I will admit that. I think the CGI in that movie is god awful, but I really have grown to respect that film. I was, for a long time, I absolutely hated it. I despised it. But Jackie Earl Haley, I've said this numerous times on the podcast, so I'm sorry for repeat viewers, but Jackie Earl Haley did something that Robert Englund couldn't do as Freddy Krueger, and that's make us hate him. Like when you watch the remake, you're like, I hate this guy. I hate Freddy Krueger. He's a child molester. He's disgusting. And yeah, he was a child killer before when he was Robert Englund, but he was so charismatic that we were like, fuck them kids. They probably had it coming.
Yeah,
But with this one, and I do like little clips from the remake, like,
why are you screaming? I haven't even caught you yet.
that's one of my favorite lines in the whole film. I think that's a blast, and I'm not a blast, but like watching him, like that, his type of humor did work for me as well. Now that was 2010, and obviously it's been 12 years since we've had any type of Nightmare on Elm Street material. Would you like to see them carry on the story of Freddy Krueger and maybe another remake or a prequel or something like that?
yeah, maybe a prequel, like before he was, torched in the building, or like maybe a TV series, even like Chucky, like something like that would be cool.
See, I always thought that like they used to with Freddy's Nightmares, if they did like a real legit Freddy Krueger TV series of him going to like different kids in each episode, like I think that'd be so awesome. Like I think that'd be a great series.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and I would love to see a prequel as well to see, Fred Krueger, not Freddy Krueger, but Fred Krueger and his life, like a whole movie based on that. I think would be really good.
Like part
So
6
Jen,
kind
we
of
know
touched
about
on that a little bit.
what's that?
So part 6 kind of touched on it a little bit, like his foster parents, and it was Alice Cooper, which is cool.
Right. Well, it's funny because a lot of people hate Freddy's Dead for good reason. It's not a very good film, but
it's cheesy as hell. But yeah.
Yeah, my uncle took me to see it in the movie theater in 3D, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I definitely have a soft spot for Freddy's Dead, and I think I always will.
Yeah, me too. It came out when I was like 12 or something like that. So it's kind of like
I was real young when it came out. I just remember seeing the 3D and just being so stoked on it. Like, this is so cool. So I know how horror started for you, Jen, and we know that Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously, very, very impactful film. But I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here for a second. My little buddy Ghostface has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Jen? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Oh God, that's too hard to pick. Oh my gosh. I have a stock answer for this question because it's so hard to pick one. But I usually say The Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I remember watching it when I was young. I remember it takes place in Colorado, where I'm from. So I'm like, oh my God, it's in Colorado.
Right.
And everything. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be like Danny, riding my tricycle around the hotel. How shit is that? And sliding down the the window, the sled. I'm like, oh my God, get my sled. Let's go.
Yeah.
And now as an adult,
did you watch Dr. Sleep?
yes, I do like it.
Well, what'd you think of Dr. Sleep?
I did like it. Yeah, that's pretty good. You didn't like it?
No, look.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I like how he tied the Stanley Kubrick movie, with the book, and tried to give Stephen King the ending that he wanted from his book. So it's pretty good how they married it together.
See, that's another one I'd like to see a sequel for. I'd like to see Abra's story continued because I think I'm one of the few that I actually look. I love The Shining. I got
Yeah.
the 217 key right here, but I think I'm one of the few that I actually prefer Doctor Sleep. I think Rose the Hat is an amazing villain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I love the fact that this movie could stand on its own. This doesn't have to be a sequel to The Shining. Like you could go into Doctor Sleep never seeing The Shining and it would totally make sense. So
Yeah.
I do love it, and I'm a huge fan of Mike Flanagan. So
Yeah.
I definitely love what they did there. Now, I want to go back to A Nightmare on Elm Street, and we talked about Glenn's death a little bit, but really, there's only 4 deaths in this movie. The deaths are few and far between, but all are completely memorable. Besides Glenn's death, you got Tina going up the wall, you got Rod being hanged in the jail cell, and you have the mom essentially at the end. Which kill besides Johnny Depp's kill would you say affected you the most?
Oh, Tina at the beginning, the just being dragged across the ceiling. Well, and the cuts, man, those cuts were like brutal, and they just got
Yeah.
and it was like, and then, yeah, just blood everywhere when she falls down, and just blood splashes like everywhere. Like that's pretty visceral, yeah.
Yeah. And you talk again about the practical effects at that moment of having Rod sitting there, Tina, and you can still see him, even though she's going up the wall. And obviously, again, because of budget, the makeup was really hard to apply to Robert Englund. So Freddy Krueger only has 7 minutes of screen time in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And that's a big reason why you don't see him in that moment, why they just use an invisible, she's in her dream, but it worked out so well.
Yeah, that's kind of scarier, really.
Yeah. And I love in Wes Craven's New Nightmare how they kind of did that, ever play Skin the Cat, and you can see him at some points, you can't see him at some points. I love how they went back and kind of paid homage to that original scene. And since we're talking about a franchise being A Nightmare on Elm Street, what film from the franchise is your favorite of the franchise?
Besides the first one?
Yeah.
Of course. Probably Dream Warriors, of course. Yeah. Trying to think. When he comes out of the ground, that big worm or whatever, grabs her and slams her down to the ground. I was like, wow.
I think Dream Warriors, when it comes to a cast, I think it has the best cast of kids that you're rooting for. I think it's one of the first times I ever watched a slasher where I genuinely cared about every kid that he was going after. I had that genuine fear of every single one. Like, no, not them. They're too cool. Please don't take them. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. Me personally, everybody makes fun of me, but my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie, even though I think the original is probably the best, I still say my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie will always be Part 4 of The Dream Master. I think that's the one I watched the most as a kid. And it still grosses me out, like the Roach Motel, when she's lifting weights and her arms break. There's just so much good about that movie. So it's always amazing to me, Jen, to learn how horror started for people, and someone especially as artistic as you that continues to put that design onto paper. And like I said, guys, this is incredible. Don't lose your head, Mom. And it's funny because on the inside you got Mama and little Jason, and my daughter says that's my wife and Kenny right there, my oldest son, which I think is great. Cool. So make sure, look, Mrs. Voorhees lost her head again. Make sure you guys are clicking the links down here in the description. Make sure you're following her on social media. Make sure you're checking out the Etsy store. Because like I said, the horror family and friends that you have are going to love these cards. They're so awesome and they're so unique and well thought out. Now, Jen, before I let you go, I have one last question for you. So we're going to go back to A Nightmare on Elm Street. And what we're going to do is rank this on a skull count. Now, we're not judging it on acting, production, score, nothing like that. What we're doing is strictly judging this movie on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. What would your ranking of A Nightmare on Elm Street be?
5. It's just ingrained in my brain, and just the images, the visuals, just it's there, and it's great. It's perfect, really.
Well, I have a friend of mine, and this is no joke. People have heard me talk about this before, and they think I'm messing around. I'm not. I have a friend of mine that after he watched Nightmare on Elm Street, after you had the part with Jesus Garcia with the sheet coming in and wrapping around his neck and hanging him in the jail cell, my friend would not, and still probably to the last 10 years, would not sleep with sheets on his bed. He was terrified to have
Yeah.
sheets on his bed. And I was like, if that's not showing you how effective this movie is, I really don't know what is. So,
Right.
well, guys, we are at the end of the third act here. Jenn, please don't go anywhere. I have a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.